Welcome, Dolphins fans, haters, and everyone in between to your favorite show, discussing the greatest franchise in sports, the Miami Dolphins. This is the PhinsPod. My name is Moose, your host, and today, on the day before we hit draft month, let's talk about the position on everyone's mind. Wide receiver. The Dolphins are slotted in yours, mine, and both of our grandmother's mock drafts to select a pass catcher on April 29th. But before we turn our attention and focus there, we need to have an understanding of what it is that we're working with. So in today's episode, we're looking at Tua's weapons, who he has to work with, to see exactly where it is he's lacking, and where the Dolphins should focus their attention come draft night. Let's dive in.
My guess is they'll keep flipping those picks well into the future. There will be picks with ties back to Laramie Tunsil for the rest of the decade.
I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, first, Tunsil, he deserves a statue out there. Maybe Billy O'Brien deserves one to go along with that. But I just, you can't say enough about Chris Greer and Brian Flores and what they've done since they've taken over in Miami. You know, again, I don't want to say it's, you know, I'm not like it's Shanahan McVay. The Dolphins just every year so far have just been like, here, chips in the middle of the table. We're making moves. We're going for it. I mean, that's the first thing I love about it. The second thing I love is just knowing how the board is kind of shaking out for the NFL draft, right? Hey, we got pick number 3. Hey, there's some quarterbacks that people might like. Hey, we need a wide receiver. And nobody does in front of us. In fact, we don't need to be at number 3 to get a wide receiver. You know, that's what, by all accounts, that's what I would expect this is all about.
Firstly, I just want to say thank you all so much for listening. There's been some recent growth, so if you're new here to the channel, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, welcome. Thank you so much for joining the pod. Thank you for listening as well. Now, jumping into things, it's obvious that as a quarterback, you need support in order to survive. Yes, all NFL players are capable enough. They don't all suck that bad. Yet, because of the degrees of separation being so minuscule for all these players, mediocre weaponry still exists and can really hurt a quarterback's chances of succeeding. And that quarterback needs relief in their efforts of moving the ball down the field. And of course, there are some exceptions to this, but for the most part, all QBs need elite or at least borderline elite talented pass catchers and running backs. And we've already talked about the Dolphins running back situation. If you want to hear more on that, go check out episode 37 of the podcast, after you listen to this, of course. But it's clear that the team needs an upgrade there. Currently, Miami has Myles Gaskin, Malcolm Brown, and Savon Ahmed. Myles Gaskin will likely enter the season with the job to lose, even if a guy like Najee comes in. Of course, Najee will most likely take over that role, but whoever it is that gets drafted is going to have to earn it. And however, the team could look in the second round, too, to a guy like Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne. Regardless, they should be seeking that upgrade. And similarly, Savon Ahmed will also be given a shot, too, to compete for that starting spot. Some of that competition includes recently acquired Malcolm Brown. Brown is a solid back, but he's not someone who's going to change the face of this team's offense. He's fast, but not blazing, powerful, but not unstoppable, and has solid vision, but nothing to write home about. He's definitely an upgrade in terms of depth, but Brown should get some competition via the NFL draft as well. Miami needs someone who can complement Myles Gaskin well, and I don't think any of us were that thrilled with Malcolm Brown being the answer there. He shouldn't be either. Again, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds surrounding running backs as we have already discussed it, and going forward, we're going to discuss it more, and specifically Miami's plans via the draft to address the position. But no, today's episode is mainly about the wide receiver position, and not the ones that we hope to see come through the door, but the guys we already have. And we'll start right at the top. Will Fuller. So the signing of Fuller, although it only is a one-year deal, it's exciting to see what that 1 year is going to look like. He adds speed and an element there that was not previously existing in the Dolphins offense. And it's going to be made abundantly clear as we go further through this how much we are lacking a guy like this. Not only is Will Fuller fast, but Will Fuller can run every route on the tree, and he does it with crisp, smooth, and elite quickness and athleticism. That's the thing. He's a former first-round pick, and yes, he has been injured, and we're going to get into that, but as an athlete, Will Fuller is one of the best pure guys out there. He's like a beefed-up Robbie Anderson, and that's saying something because Robbie Anderson's also a great receiver as a deep threat. Will Fuller's just better than that. So it's been a great week and a half having Will Fuller as a Dolphin, but obviously just very excited to see what that looks like on the field on Sundays. And once his timing with Tua is matched up, expect some fireworks there. I really think his mere presence is going to be stretching everything out, and it's going to help a lot for this next guy, Devonta Parker, who used to be that number one wide receiver. And Parker is a seasoned vet now. He's not a young spring chicken. Remember, first round, I believe it was 2014 that we took him, which is crazy because he still feels like a young wide receiver still developing. But I think we kind of got what we got here. A really good number two guy, not really someone you want as your number one. And now that Will Fuller's here, I don't think he needs to be. And considering that currently Miami kind of has him at a steal, his cap hit is 11 mil, which is a little bit more, but it's going to drop to 8 and then 9 mil respectively, each over the next 2 seasons. So what Parker lacks in his speed and that quickness that kind of Fuller brings you, he does make up with his other traits. And his jump ball ability, Devonta Parker is perhaps the most underrated wide receiver when it comes to his ability to track the football and bring it down over defenders. We've seen some of those games where he kind of just goes beast mode, unstoppable. Obviously, Philly comes to mind, so I'm very happy that Jalen Mills is back in the division. But it's clear, though, through watching last season, that Tua and Parker need a little more time to work on that chemistry, and that should come. Tua, other than that Arizona game, did not really throw it up to Parker much, and he tried in Kansas City, which fell off of his hands, but that connection there didn't start happening until really late in the season, where you felt like Tua was like, screw it, I'm throwing it one-on-one, I have trust in my guy out there. So having full faith in this guy, you want to see that develop, and I think that will a year in. And now having Will Fuller opposite, stretching the field and kind of opening things up for Parker or lining them up in bunch formations could really help spring Devonta open. And even if Miami does bring in a young wideout like a Jamar Chase or Devonta Smith, I don't think the Fins would part with Parker. I don't see a reason to. He is still extremely good, and the contract's hard to beat. So he would get more on the open market. So if they were to part ways with him just because they feel like they can be younger and cheaper at the position, most likely it would be for like a mid-round trade. I would be kind of a mid-round draft pick via a trade, which would be a little bit disappointing. I'm a fan of Devonta Parker, and I feel like we've never really seen what he could look like having a true number one opposite him, and maybe he is even better. So you hope to see him stay healthy and reliable as we enter year 2 into his development. But that's the main concern with these two, health. And although they both have borderline elite ceilings, I mean, Devonta Parker, when he's on, he's unstoppable, like we said. Will Fuller, when he's on, good luck trying to cover him. Your safety is going to have to be 20 yards back, even further than normal, because Will Fuller is going over the top. So these guys can change the face of your offense. We know this. Fuller is probably closer to being that elite player. He's kind of been it a little more consistently when on the field, but neither of them can stay on the field. Neither of them can really stay healthy. So you really hope that the Dolphins know what they're doing here and have faith in that training staff, because the idea of losing both of them for a week or two, if not longer, that's terrifying, and I think could really just bring us right back to where we were last season. So that's my only fear in investing in injury-prone guys. They're injured, so that's the concern here. So the training staff better be right on this one. And speaking of injury, Preston Williams is next up, and although he's only been given 2 seasons, unlike these other guys, to show anything, he has shown one thing, a knack for, you guessed it, injury. Preston Williams flashed so much promise as an undrafted free agent from Colorado State. He's big, strong. Coaches and players said, guys of that size don't move the way he does. Now, his issues have always been his hands, and Miami just needs to hope that develops, because it was clear that him and Tua had some sort of a rapport. So he made some eye-catching plays as well, and that rapport that he was building prior to his injury in the Cardinals game was present too. Excuse me. If Miami can use Preston in the slot, say, or maybe rotate one of the other 2 guys there as well, maybe have Will Fuller in the slot for a play or 2, Devonta Parker, whatever, use them creatively. Those 3 types of body types and play styles, I think it can really help Preston Williams elevate his game. He does not need to come back, he doesn't need to come back and be that number 1 guy that we were kind of hoping he could develop into. He doesn't need to be that anymore. He just needs to come back and be healthy. Preston Williams needs to prove that he can stay that way too if he wants a long-term deal from Miami. Going forward, Jakeem Grant. Although everyone hates Jakeem Grant, his contract is extremely favorable, never exceeding $5 million per season for the next couple years. So if he's able to fix his drop issues, which is easier said than done. He could really hang around, though, on the roster, as he does provide something that, like I said, not a lot of these other guys do: speed. The only guy who offers that level of speed is Will Fuller, and now Robert Foster, who we'll get to. But Jakeem Grant has been working in the lab with Tua. We've seen that. He's been flexing it on social media. So there should be some improved chemistry. And hey, maybe this is the year where it all really clicks for him. And again, having Will Fuller, we've talked about this, opening everything up for other guys, just him pulling the defense, that was Jakeem before. He was, as Tua said, we heard him say it, Jakeem was great at running those brotherhood routes, which are essentially routes that you're not getting the ball. Your job is to pull the defense in a certain direction to help another part of the play develop. Now, Will Fuller are probably going to be running a lot of those brotherhood style routes, and he'll also probably be able to actually capitalize on some deep shots when Tua does take them, unlike Jakeem Grant. So hopefully that, the reduction in what's expected of him actually helps a lot and makes Dolphins fans, makes him fall into their good graces again, because I think we were just expecting too much from him. Again, he was a late round pick, small guy. No one really expected him to build a career for himself, so it's definitely great to see. Perhaps the most intriguing player last season, Lynn Bowden Jr. Bowden was acquired from the Raiders, if you remember, prior to the season, right before the season, so he was implemented pretty slowly. That's why we didn't see him right away. And he did show some promise as being dangerous with the ball in his hand. He seems to always make that first guy miss. He doesn't possess elite speed, but he has solid hands for a guy who's a converted, quarterback, running back, receiver type guy. He doesn't drop the ball, and he has great quickness and athleticism. So if he can become a route technique specialist and really work with the coaches to know his spots and know where to sit in the zone and kind of become that safety blanket, then I actually think Lynn Bowden can become a weapon for this offense. We saw glimpses of it. Another year in the system, another year developing your body, getting bigger, stronger, faster. Why the hell not? I think Lynn Bowden can absolutely kind of become what many in the SEC thought he could be when he was lighting things up at Kentucky. He just always makes that first guy miss. So go back and watch those highlights. It's tough for that first guy to get him. He usually has to kind of have a slew of guys get around him before he falls. So now we're going to get interesting, though. Albert Wilson, the former number 15, before Lynn Bowden came and stole it away from him. The Dolphins will have the opt-outs returning this year. So the guys who opted out are actually experienced. So we're actually going to talk about these two now. Compared to these other options, Albert Wilson is a seasoned vet. And starting with him, I know many believe his release is going to be a foregone conclusion. They think Miami is going to save money. Why keep him around? But frankly, there's kind of no one else on the roster with his specific skill set. The next closest is Lynn Bowden, who we just talked about, but he doesn't have that same level of speed that Albert Wilson does. And yes, Albert Wilson's coming off a real rough injury via the Achilles injury, but it's been over a year now. He wasn't out for injury. He was out due to COVID and protecting his family and trying to make the best decision there, which obviously absolutely fine. And of course, he's probably been also in the lab. I mean, we saw when Tua posted, I believe it was Jakeem Grant posted the videos with workouts with Tua. There was Albert Wilson working. So Jakeem might be faster than Albert Wilson, but he's not as reliable nor as good of a runner with the ball in his hands. So there's something that Wilson offers. He's only 28, still in his prime, and if he returns healthy and ready to go, I don't know if the team will want to get rid of him. I don't really see why. He's been working with Tua, so you hope that there's some form of connection between the two, and it's not like completely, like they're starting from scratch there. And think about a bunch formation, right? Think about, you're watching TV, Tua's in the shotgun, top of the screen, bunch formation. You got Will Fuller, Devontae Parker, and Albert Wilson. The route combinations at your disposal, again, assuming Albert Wilson is what he used to be, you can do so much with that combination of skill set, player, levels of speed and size. And whether it be taking a deep shot over the top with Fuller, finding Parker over the middle, or Albert Wilson dragging underneath, he complements the other guys extremely well. So despite that, the Dolphins could replace him, right? They just need to find that skill set, though, because right now, none of these other guys are like running backs with the balls in their hand, other than Lynn Bowden. But Albert Wilson, we saw it firsthand. He makes guys miss at a whole different level, and he's a bit of a burner. So in order for the Dolphins to replace that, they have to go find a guy like Jamar Chase in the first round, or even Rondale Moore. So although I do love his game, and I think we need some form of it, it may not actually be coming from Wilson himself. Now, the other guy to opt out, Allen Hurns, signed an extension before the end of the 2019 season, which was surprising then, and it's kind of not really worked out. But at the very least, it did point to the coaching staff finding something that they really do like about him. Allen Hurns was at one point a potential Pro Bowl caliber receiver opposite Allen Robinson in Jacksonville. He was a young superstar. The Allen brothers in Jacksonville a few years ago really looked like the real deal. And I do believe that he may have a tough time cracking the lineup considering his age and the cost. We'll see. He has great hands, Hurns does, and he's an excellent route runner. Something, kind of like a souped-up Isaiah Ford. And he's just been, it's just been so long, though, since he's played at his highest level. Even when he came to Miami, he was still removed from a serious injury. When he was, going back to his Jacksonville days, first he went to Dallas. He was signed by Dallas. They hoped that he could kind of be more than he's kind of become now. He suffered a horrible injury there. His career has kind of gone only downhill since, and Miami obviously picked him up back in 2019, and he wasn't a liability. He didn't show anything that was atrocious, but he didn't really elevate anything either. So he just seems to be a guy right now at this stage of his career, which sucks because he did flash some really great traits a few years ago, and you hope that it's not like something that of injuries, doing that could really reduce it. So obviously I'm rooting that he comes back and is awesome. What we want is to be, after the preseason games, to not want to cut anyone, to be terrified to cut anyone because we know that someone else is going to pick him up and he's going to do well there. That's a good problem to have. It's not a problem we had before. So hoping that Albert Wilson and Allen Hurns come back and add to the room is a good thing. Next up, Mac Hollins. And we've talked about Hollins. Yes, great character guy, great locker room guy, hilarious. But he's an even better special teams player. And in no way in hell do you want him as your legitimate receiving option. We saw where that took the Dolphins in the last month of the season. I know. The miracle in Las Vegas, I get it. But as a receiver, he's not who you want. He was re-signed, so my guess is the team is going to be exclusively trying to use him as a gunner. Don't foresee him really cracking the lineup. And if he does, we got problems again. Next up was a free agent addition this year, Robert Foster from the Buffalo Bills. Foster is intriguing. Think John Brown, Isaiah McKenzie of Buffalo, but Foster kind of fits that mold. He's smaller, but lightning fast, and he can work the short to intermediate routes well. I'm not sure how much crossover he had with Tua when he was at Alabama, but he should be given a shot to make a name for himself and become the Jakeem Grant or Albert Wilson replacement. He is fast. He is smaller size, but he is very fast, and frankly, has better hands than Jakeem Grant. So he can definitely earn himself a role if he can replace one of those two guys. And then last up, we're going to be talking about Malcolm Perry. 7th round pick last year, showed some flashes when he did get the ball in his hands, which was very few and far between. And there doesn't really seem to be that defined role yet for him. And all I know is every time he did touch that ball, something electric seemed to happen. We remember, if you remember the mic'd up with with Jerome Baker, every time Malcolm got the ball, there was Jerome saying, I told you, he's the hardest guy to catch on this team. And that's a hard trait to find. And frankly, I think that says a lot. When your starting linebacker is talking about a player and knows him as being the toughest guy to get his hands on, maybe you should keep that guy around. I would hate to, try to, do something sneaky, like put him on the practice squad or something and just have him poached away by like New England. Because I absolutely seeing him being that type of guy. But I would just love to see the team, the Dolphins, try to implement him more and create packages like we saw last season in the Wildcat. However, rather than just the standard Wildcat where he takes the direct snap and goes up the middle for 2 yards, let's get more creative. You have Lindbone Jr. there as well. I could see some really neat formations and plays with a guy like Perry. And he may end up, unfortunately, being a casualty if the team drafts a couple new wideouts. But I'd like to see him stay. At the very least, sign to the practice squad, rather than just getting rid of him. But even if he does sign to the practice squad, like I mentioned, I fear he's the type of guy who gets poached away. He's toolsy enough for another club to take a shot on him. He just has the character that you want to see. He's got the speed that you want to see and the elusiveness. So why not take a shot on him? And plus, he's so young. So we do know one thing. The Dolphins overall, taking a step back now, have improved their receiving core. They've done this by being proactive and signing Will Fuller and Robert Foster, but they've also improved passively from the returns of Albert Wilson and Allen Hurns, as well as Preston Williams from injury. So you hope that the team creates an arsenal for Tua on the outside so that there are truly no excuses from him. And of course, we want that to come via the draft. Obviously, free agency is kind of done. Miami might pick up someone who's released as sort of the cut downs happen closer to the season. So in no way is a current receiver room going to be the final product. Now it's just about finding out where it is that those new additions are coming from.
Yeah, I think you definitely give him this year. I think the interesting thing for me is I did the 49ers Miami game where Miami absolutely blew the doors off of the 49ers. And it was interesting to me, Colin, because talking to Brian Flores at that point early in the season, he's like, listen, Tua's not ready. If he was my kid, he wouldn't play. And then a couple of weeks later, all of a sudden, he's the starting quarterback, right? To me, which said that was not a coach's decision. That was an ownership decision. We want to see the new toy that we drafted, right? And so for me, I think he was unprepared or unready to play. He was forced to play, not by the coaching staff, but by the ownership. That's just my take. And that's what I feel like they did. So to me, because like I said, Brian Flores told me flat out, if he was my son, he wouldn't play. I don't think he's quite ready to play. And that had to do with not only understanding of what was going on, but that had to do with injury history and overcoming those injuries. So I think you have to look at it like, hey, Tua is going to be a lot better with an off season where he can prepare, where he's healthy, and we'll gamble on the fact that he's going to get better.
Thank you guys so much for listening to the PhinsPod. That's going to do it for us here today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want more of the pod, check out patreon.com/PhinsPod for literally $2 a month. You can listen to bonus episodes, and the site has some other goodies as well. Link is in the description, or head to patreon.com/PhinsPod. And thank you so much for the support. Please remember to like the video if you enjoyed the show and subscribe just so you never miss a chance to chat about your Miami Dolphins. Remember that the pod is available on all platforms, Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, and of course on YouTube. Continue the conversation with us over on Twitter and Instagram at PhinsPod, and follow us on TikTok as well. We drop some great content on TikTok at PhinsPod, and check out the site for news and content too, phinspod.com. I hope you guys have an amazing day, and until next time, stay safe. Love y'all.